We begin today the Gemara on Daf Mem Tes Summit Beis, 12 lines up from the bottom of the Yomud where it says Tanan. So the Gemara here, the Mishnah first, is speaking about the halacha of Eino, which is in a sale when there was fraud in the sale, either it was overcharged or undercharged or underpaid. So the Mishnah here said, there's actually two opinions in the Mishnah. The Tanakama, the Chachamim say that when it comes to a shtus, that is the shear of Eino, where the buyer, let's say, if he was overcharged, he can have charata from the entire sale, or he could say, give me back my money. And Rab Tarfon said that the shear of Eino is a shlish. If you were overcharged, if the buyer was overcharged a third, that's when he can have charata or ask back for his money. Now in this, the Gemara brought a machlekes between Rav and Shmuel. How do we measure this shtus according to the Chachamim? Or the same would be also regarding Rab Tarfon when you measure a shlish. Rav says the way to measure this shtus is just by the value of the actual product that's being sold. Shmuel says you evaluate it by the value of the product itself, but you also could evaluate it by the actual price that was paid. If over there, if you look at the final price that was paid, it's going to be a shtus, that what the fraud was, then the halacha of the Eino, which is at this amount of a shtus, will also apply. That was the machlekes. So the Gemara here is going to bring from the example that the Mishnah chooses to give for the shear of a shtus as a raya to Shmuel's opinion. Talk to Gemara Tanan, what did it say in the Mishnah? Ha'Eino dalet kesef me esrim varbo kesef l'sela. What is the amount of Eino? It's 4 ma'ah, which is out of 24 that make up a sela. Okay, so it's 4 out of 24, which is the sixth, and the Mishnah says, which is shtus l'mekach, that is the sixth where the din of Eino applies. So now the Gemara says, what do we see over here? My love, what is the case over here? Don't you think the case is the Zovin Shove Esrim, Be'esrim Varba, that this seller, he sold a product, its true value in the market is 20, and he sold it for 24. So if he sold it for 24, if you add 4 out of the real value of the product, which was 20, what is that? That's not a sixth. That's really a fifth. Right? Because 4 times 5 is 20. So if you add 4 to that, so it's really the fraud over here, if you're going to evaluate by the product itself, is a fifth. And the Mishnah says that this is considered to be the shtos, a sixth, where the din of Eino applies. So if so, Shma Mino, from here we can learn, like Shmuel said, shtos ma'ois nami shaninu, that we evaluate the sixth by the final price that was paid. 4 out of 24, which is the final price that was paid over here, is a sixth. And that's why this is also considered to be the fraud of a shtus, and not a fifth if you just go by the product. So the Gemara says, Loi, that's not how you have to learn the Mishnah. Rather, what happened over here is the Zovin Shove Esrim Varba Be'esrim. What happened is, the one that got frauded here is not the buyer. The one that got frauded is the seller, because this is a product that was worth 24, and the buyer underpaid. He only paid 20. So he paid 4 zuz, or 4 ma, less than its price. So over here, the 4 is actually a shtus on the value of the product itself, because the product itself is worth 24. 4 is a shtus of that. That's the case of the Mishnah. So the example the Mishnah is giving is a case where the meicher is the one that experienced the Eino. So the Gemara asks on this, Mi nis'ana meicher. How could you say the example the Mishnah gives is a case where the meicher is the one that experienced the fraud? What does the Mishnah say after this? Ad mosai mutala hachser. Up until which point can you back out of the sale? As the Mishnah says, by Eino, you can back out of the sale, or you can ask back for your money. Up until which point is this? Until the point where you had time to take this product and show it to a friend of yours, or show it to a merchant, which will point out to you, hey, you got overcharged over here. So we give him that time. For him to have, after that time, though, he can't back out of the sale anymore. Now, Va'omar Rav Nachman said regarding this shear that the Mishnah gives, this shear is only applicable regarding the buyer. He has the product in his hands, so he can go and show it to a relative or to someone that's going to point out to him that he got overcharged. But the seller, in a case where he was underpaid, he can always back out from the sale. And the reason is because the meicher does not have the product in his hands anymore. There's no point in giving this shear until he's going to show the product. So he sold it. So for the Meicher, at any point that he realizes that he got underpaid, he can back out from the sale, or he can ask for the pay, for the money. So it must be that the Mishnah that gives this shear is talking about a case where the buyer is the one that got defrauded. So how can we say that the case of here is that the product was worth 24 and the buyer only paid 20 for it? So the Gemara says a different shot, which would fit with Rav, that the oina is actually only a shtus by the value of the product itself. And that is, when the Mishnah is talking about it here, the Zavin, Shave, Esrim Va'arba, Be'esrim Utmanya. The product itself was worth 24, and the seller charged him 4 more, and now he sold it for 28. So in this case, when he charged him 28 and was worth 24, it's a shtus of the actual mekach of the actual product itself. That's the understanding according to Rav in the Mishnah. And the Gemara goes through a similar discussion according to Rav Tarfon's opinion, that says that the shear of Eina is a third. Not a shtus of 6, but a third. Tanan, the Mishnah said, Hoyre Rav Tarfon belod. Rav Tarfon said the halacha in Lod, that Hoyna shmeina kesef, me esrim varba kesef, l'sela, which is shlish lemekach. If it's 8 kesef out of 24 kesef, or out of 28 kesef, that is. So, one second. I said it right. 8 kesef out of 24 kesef. So then that's going to be a third of the 24. That's what the shear of the Aina is when you could have charata or ask back for your money. So now, my love. So what's the case over here? Don't you think the case is the Zavin Shave Shitziri Be'esen Varba? That this is a product that was worth 16, and he overcharged the buyer, and he sold it to him for 24. That's the extra 8 that he charged him, a third more than what its value is. Well, if so, Shmami no, I can prove from here, like Shmuel's opinion, that Shlish Ma'ois Nami Shaninu. This amount of a Shlish, which is 8, it's 8 out of 24, which is the final sale price that it was. But it's not a Shlish out of the price of the product, because what's the price of the product? 16. 8 out of 16 is half. So you see over here that the shlish that the Mishnah is saying is out of what the final price is, like Shmuel. Says the Gemara again, Loi, we can say that the one that got frauded here is the seller, not the buyer. And the case over here is the Zavain Shave Esrim Varba B'Shitzer. What happened was the opposite, that this product, the value is 24, and it was sold only for 16. And therefore the seller got underpaid. But again, the Gemara asks the same question as we asked before. How could you say, Minas Ana Meicher? In our Mishnah is the case that it's the Meicher, the one that experienced the Aina. What does the Mishnah continue to say afterwards? Amalahem, Rab Tarfon told to the merchants in Lod, Kol Ayay Mutalachser. In a case where there's Aina, the buyer has the entire day to retract from this. And he argued with the Chachamim. The Chachamim said you just have the amount of time to go and show the product to someone that will point you out the fraud that you experienced. Tarfon says no, you have all day. And on this Rav Nachman said, this amount of time is given only for the lekeach, for him to realize he's going to assess the value of his product, and so he's given the entire day to assess this. The meicher that doesn't have the product in his possession, at any point that he realizes that he experienced a no, he was underpaid, he could have charata. So the Mishnah is clearly talking about a case where it's the lekeach, the buyer, that experienced a no. So we can't say the answer we said before. Elo, so therefore the Gemara says, according to Rav, the pshat of the Mishnah is the Zavin, Shavachav Daled, Butlosim V'Trein. The product itself was worth 24, and the Meicher overcharged 32, so he charged 8 more from 24. So that's going to be a na of a shlish, and a na of the shlish is based on the price of the actual product itself, not on the final price. And therefore fits with what Rav said, that the inah of a shlish is based on the price of the product itself. As the Gemara says, Tanya Kava say the Shmuel, we learned in the Braisa like Shmuel's opinion. Because the Braisa says, Mi shehutal olav, the one that upon him was thrown this, meaning he's the one that experienced the fraud here, Yadai alal yaina. He has the upper hand in trying to back out from the sale. Ketzad, how does this play out? If he was sold a product that its true value is supposed to be 5, and he paid for it 6, so minasane, who was overcharged here? Lekeach. The lekeach was overcharged. So yad lekeach alol yaina. The lekeach is the one that has the upper hand. Rotza Omer Tenli Moisai. If the Lekech wants, he says, I'm backing out from the entire sale. Give me back my money. Or he could say, Tenli Masha Einisani. I want to keep the product, just give me back that extra $1 that you charged me. So right here, in this case that we just learned, we see clearly like the opinion of Shmuel. Because here the value of the product itself is 5. And he was overcharged another $1. So the fact that he was overcharged $1, what is this? It's not a sixth from the price of the product itself. Because if the price of the product itself is 5, then paying another $1 is a inaw of a fifth, based on the value of the product itself, right? So the inaw over here, sixth, is only if you look at the final price, which is vav, 6. Okay, now on the next case that it says in the Braisa, here this fits with Rav's opinion as well. If the product itself, the value was 6, and the buyer underpaid, he only paid 5, so minasana, who's the one that was frauded here? Meicher. The Meicher is the one that the Dainah, he got underpaid. Yad Meicher al. So in this case, the Meicher has the upper hand. He can say to the buyer, give me back my product, my item, I'm not interested in the sale altogether. Or he can say to him, Tenli Masha Einisani, give me back just that, pay me that extra $1 that you didn't pay, and let's keep the sale in effect. Yeah, so in this Braisa, you see clearly like Shmuel's opinion. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to what it said in the Mishnah. And the Gemara here is going to have an Ibaya. Actually, there's 2 different Ibayas here we're going to learn now on the Mishnah. So just before we learn the Ibaya inside, the rule that comes out from our Mishnah is as follows. There are 3 different categories when it comes to a sale where someone was frauded. There's the case where the Oinah was more than a shtus. In such a case, the halacha and the lashon of the Gemara is bitul mekach. The whole sale it's a mekach tos. There's no... Either one of them can back out. There's no sale there at all when it's more than a shtus. I'm explaining this according to the opinion of the Chachamim that say that everything revolves around that amount of the shtus. Right? So if it's more than a shtus, bitul mekach. If the fraud there was less than a shtus, less than a sixth, so then it's mechila. That's something where whether the meicher or the lekech experienced this fraud, that's something that you meichel, because it's too little of an amount of what the fraud was. When it's the amount of a shtos, over here the halach is that the one that experienced the fraud, like we just learned, yadeh alal yaina, if he wants, he can just ask back for that amount of money that he was frauded, or he can back out from the entire sale. Those are the 3 halachas. And then I'm explaining it all according to the Chachamim, but then as we had in the Mishnah, we have the opinion of Rab Tarfon. Rab Tarfon says that all of this is regarding a shlish, not regarding a shtos. Right? Okay, so now the Gemara here is going to discuss what's going to be the halacha b'negeya to pachis mishtos. The shaila was asked, pachis mishtos l'Rabbanan. If the fraud here was less than a shtos, according to the opinion of the Rabbanan. So what did we say regarding a case of pachis mishtos? So over there it's mechila. Over there the whole you can't back out of the sale even if there was a fraud because it's such a small amount. So therefore there's a mechila. The sale stays in effect. Now, what does this mean? Do we learn the Mishnah simply from what we understand from the Mishnah, that in such a case, la'al tahavi mechila, that immediately it's a mechila and there's no backing out from the sale? Or perhaps we could say that we apply over here the same shear that we just learned before, that it says in the Mishnah, and that is b'chdei sheyireh letager oy lekroivei. Even by less than a shtos, it's not that right away the sale is automatically in effect and there's a mechila immediately. You still have time to show it to a merchant or to a relative that's going to point out to you the fact that you were frauded over here. Until that time, you could have charata from the sale. The Mishnah gave this shear b'negei to a case where the oinah was a shtos. Similar, less than a shtos, you also have this amount of time where you can have charata from the sale. Now the Gemara explains this tzad of the Ibaya. Now if you'll argue and say, if even when the oinah was less than a shtus, you still have time to back out until you show it to someone, so then so then what difference is there if the fraud is a shtus or less than a shtus? It's the same thing. Either way you can back out of the sale until you show it to someone. You have that amount of time. So the Gemara explains, the difference is the ilu shtos. When the oinah of the sale is the amount of a shtos, then as we learned before, yadeh alal yaina, the one that was frauded has the upper hand. Ratza chayzer, if you want, you can back out from the entire sale. Ratza kaine o machzerina, Or if he wants, he can say, no, I want the sale in effect, but just give me back that money that I was overcharged, if it's the buyer that was overcharged. That's regarding the case of a shtos. But v'ilu pachis mishtos. But if the fraud was less than a shtos, so even if he has time to back out from the sale, even in this case, but he can't back out from the sale completely. Kana, the sale remains in effect, but umachserino. Until he shows it, until that period of time that he can show it to someone, he's able to back out only to demand back that money that he overpaid. But he can't back out from the sale altogether. That's the shayla there. So what's the halacha? Again, so the point is, the Gemara's shayla is, when you get to a case where a person was frauded less than a shtos, do we say that, too bad, it's right away a mechila, and you can't back out in any way, you can't demand back your money? Or, no, you do still have time to ask back for the money that you overcharged until that time that you can show it to someone. Toshema, so the Gemara says, let's bring a raya from what it said in our Mishnah. Okay, so before we see the Gemara inside, if you remember, what it said in our Mishnah is, first of all, as I mentioned before, already the machlokes of Rab Chachamim and Rab Tarfon, at the shear of Eino, do we set it at a shtos or do we set it at a shlish, at a third? But then there was another thing that the Gemara said. When Rab Tarfon came to the city of Lod, there were the Tagrei Lod. That's what this sugi here is known as. It's the sugi of Tagrei Lod, the merchants of the city of Lod. So when the merchants of the city of Lod heard that Rab Tarfon said that, you can overcharge a person up to the amount of a third, samchu, they were very excited. Because they can overprice their products and sell up to a third, and there's no, and it's bittul mekach. Sorry, it's mechila. It's mechila, that is. It's totally, you can't back out from the sale. Then what happened? Rab Tarfon said that I argue with the Chachamim though on another point. I'm more stringent than the Chachamim. Like the Chachamim said that when it comes to the case of a shtos where there's a din of eino that the buyer can back out, how long does he have to back out? The amount of time that you can show your product to someone. Rab Tarfon says no, we give him all day to back out. So now sort of the return policy, in other words, or to point out that you were overcharged is a much longer period of time. So they said, okay, if so, forget about it. We're not going to follow Rab Tarfon's opinion. We're going to go back to what the Chachamim said. That's what it said in our Mishnah here. So here the Gemara quotes here just a part of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah said, Chazro l'divrei Chachamim. After they heard what Rab Tarfon said, that when it comes to the case where there's a no, so you have all day, the buyer has all day to back out, so they said, you know what, forget it. We're going back to the Chachamim's opinion, which say that you have only a short period of time to show this product to someone to back out. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain why did the merchants of Lod decide to go back to the Chachamim's opinion. When you learn, before we see the Gemara inside, when you learn the Mishnah at face value, it's very hard to understand this. Whose opinion is more beneficial for them, the Chachamim or Rab Tarfon? L'chayra, Rab Tarfon's opinion is still much more beneficial for them. Rab Tarfon is saying up until the amount of a shlish, there's no eino at all. It's all machol. The mekach stays in effect. According to Chachamim, it's only the amount of a shtos that you could overcharge. There's a very big gain that they have over here, that they could overprice it all the way up to a shlish. Once you overcharge, once you come to the amount where there is actually the eino by the amount of a shlish, so over here, Tarfon is giving more time for the buyer to back out, so they'll make sure not to overcharge at that amount of a shlish. The fact that you say that they give
not overcharge over
a shlish or more than it, a shlish or more, right? It still should be much more beneficial for them, the fact that they can overcharge double of what the Chachamim said, than the benefit that there is of the opinion of the Chachamim that when you overcharge the shear of a shlish, so according to the Rab Tarfon you can back out all day, and according to the Chachamim you can only back out, let's say, an hour or two. Which one is more of a benefit? The fact that you could overcharge so much more, that's a much bigger benefit. So that's what the Gemara is going to address here to explain what the pshat of the Mishnah is. So Savrua, the Talmidim that learned this Mishnah, they thought to explain as follows. Pachis mishlish l'Rab Tarfon ke pachis mishtos l'Rabbanan. That we're going to say that just like the Chachamim gave a shear of a shtos, and less than a shtos, what's the halacha? That it's all machol, you can't back out at all. Similar, according to Rab Tarfon, he's putting the shear at a shlish, and less than a shlish, it's like the Chachamim, you could totally back out. Okay. Or sorry, again, less than a shlish, it's all machol. The sale stays in effect. So now the question is, what taka happens if it's less than a shlish or less than a shtos? If you're going to say like the tzad we said before in the Iboye, that pachis mishtus l'Rabbanan, that less than a shtos, according to the Rabbanan, it doesn't mean that automatically and immediately the whole sale remains in effect and whatever oinah there is totally machal. Even if it's less than a shtos according to the Rabbanan, b'chdei sheyireh l'tager l'krayvai. The buyer still is able to back out from the sale that period of time that you can show it to a tager, to someone else. Just like Chachamim said that b'negei to the case of ashtos. The same thing he's saying also less than a shtos. The only difference is that, like the Gemara explained before, by a shtos, yadei alol yaina, and by less than a shtos, so then you can just ask for your money back. But you still have that time to back out. Well, Rab Tarfon that argued, and he gave a different shear for backing out. His shear was kol hayom, so according to him, you can back out the entire day. By a shlish, you can back out the entire day, and by less than a shlish as well. We're not going to say that the sale remains in effect automatically. No, less than a shlish, the buyer still has the option to back out the entire day. So now it makes sense why they went back to the opinion of the Chachamim. Why should they follow the opinion of Rab Tarfon? They're losing out with Rab Tarfon much more. Because even according to Rab Tarfon didn't come and say that anything that's less than a shlish, automatically the sale is going to be in effect and you can overcharge your buyers all the way up to a shlish. No, even less than a shlish, you're not going to want to overcharge at all because the buyer still has the option to back out from the sale. How long? The entire day. The entire day is a long period of time for him to realize that he was overcharged. And so therefore there's no point in trying to overcharge people. According to the Chachamim, true, the Chachamim set the price that you could overcharge much less, only at a shtos, but less than a shtos, you can only back out for a very short period of time. So therefore over here, you have more of an option to overcharge people, and he's not going to be able to back out because he's just given an hour or two to show it to someone. So then it makes sense why they had charata. Okay, so according to this, the Mishnah fits and makes sense. As Rashi explains over here, in the beginning, before they realized this difference between the Chachamim and Rab Tarfon regarding the length of period of time that you can back out, so they thought, let's follow Rab Tarfon's opinion, because Rab Tarfon sets the price that you could overcharge much higher than according to the Chachamim, and then afterwards, though, they realized that the time to back out, though, is much longer according to Rab Tarfon, and that shear to back out is relevant not only for the shlish and the shtos, but it's even relevant for less than the shlish and less than the shtos, so therefore, there's no point in following Rab Tarfon's opinion to try to overcharge even less than a shlish, because you're giving the guy all day to back out. So the Mishnah makes sense. But if you're going to say, according to the Rabbanan, anything less than a shtos, the sale is in effect, and it's mechila. The buyer was meichel. Rab Tarfon, nami. So therefore we're comparing, and we're saying that according to Rab Tarfon as well, la'al tav mechila. Immediately it's mechila, that the whole sale is in effect, you can't back out. So then amai chazru. Why did they go away from what Rab Tarfon said? After they heard that Rab Tarfon said that you can back out all day, but when the fraud was a shlish, why did they go away from the Rab Tarfon? With Rab Tarfon's opinion, they would do much better. The Rabbanan kamashvil who I know, because this that according to the Rabbanan is considered to be I know, which is if it's more than if it's a shtos or more than a shtos. L'Rab Tarfon havi mechila. According to Rab Tarfon, anything that's less than a shlish, between a shlish and a shtos, is considered to be total mechila, and the sale will be in effect. So as I started off, what's better? It's much better to follow Rab Tarfon's opinion for the merchants, because they are able to overprice all the way up to a shlish, and anything less than a shlish will be mechila right away. So they don't have to worry about the buyer backing out from the sale. According to the Chachamim, it's only from a shtus where there's a na, and less than a shtus that they're able to overcharge. So even if you're going to say that the length of time that's given to overcharge, or again, the length of time that's given to back out from the sale by the shlish and the shtos, by Rab Tarfon, he's giving more of a benefit to the buyer to back out a longer period of time. But the option to overcharge is much more. You can overcharge all the way to a shlish. And these Tagari Lud, they'll make sure not to overcharge a shlish. They'll overcharge up to a shlish, and then they'd have a much bigger benefit. So why did they go away from Rab Tarfon's opinion? So the Gemara, so we have a clear eye over here that this whole halacha of mechila b'mekach, less than a shlish and less than a shtos, is Not immediately. It's only after a certain amount of time, as the Gemara explained here. But now the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. We can explain Rab Tarfon's opinion totally differently. We misunderstood B'chlal what Rab Tarfon is saying. So the Gemara explains like this: Mi Sovris, do you think that the way to understand what Rab Tarfon said is Pachis Mishlish le Rab Tarfon, that according to Rab Tarfon, if you overcharged, but it's less than a shlish, so according to Rab Tarfon, it's Kepachis Mishtos le Rabbanon. That's the same like less than a shtos according to the Rabbanon. So it's just like less than a shtos according to the Rabbanon, it's a total mechila. So too, according to Rab Tarfon, he set the value of the Ainah at a shlish, and less than a shlish, it's total mechila. No, it's not the same thing. It's not. We're not comparing Rab Tarfon's opinion to the Rabbanon. Loi, mishtos va'at shlish, from the amount of a shtos until a shlish, l'Rab Tarfon kishtos atzmo l'Rabbanan dami. The halacha is like what the Rabbanan said. The halacha is regarding the shtos. What did the Rabbanan say? The halacha is by a shtos. That is where there's a no, where the one that was frauded has the upper hand to back out. What Rab Tarfon meant to say when he came and said that we set the price of a no at a shlish, what did he mean to say? What he meant to say is that according to me, if you are overcharged from a shtos all the way to a shlish, which is double, it's going to be the halacha of a no is going to apply, that the one that was frauded, the one that was overcharged, is the one that could back out. That's the halacha that Rab Tarfon said according to the Rabbanan. So if so, it comes out over here that according to Rab Tarfon, you can't ask the question that Rab Tarfon's shitta allows the merchants to overcharge the buyers all the way up to a shlish. No, that's not what he was saying. He wasn't saying that anything less than a shlish is going to be total mechila. What he was saying was that in between this price of overcharging from a shtos to a shlish, this is all considered to be oina, where the buyer could back out. That's what he was saying. Okay, so what's really the difference between Rab Tarfon and the Rabbanon in that amount when the fraud was between a shtos and a shlish? According to the Rabbanon, because it's a fraud which is more than a shtos, what's the halach in such a case? Bittul mekach, that both of them can back out. According to Rab Tarfon, it's not bittul mekach, because this is all still within the price range where you are overcharged, that it's just a no, and therefore the one that was frauded can back out. And but the other party, the moicher, if he wasn't frauded, he cannot back out. So it comes out that still the Tagari Lud over here saw all Rab Tarfon is adding is he's widening the bracket where you say that the one that was frauded could back out. But what are you gaining over here according to Rab Tarfon? You're not really gaining anything. Still, there's no reason why the Tagari Lud, they're not getting more of an option to overcharge the buyer, because the buyer still has the option to back out. The only difference is that according to the Rabbanon, the seller that was not frauded could also back out. According to Rab Tarfon, only the one that experienced the Ainah, only the one that was frauded could back out. But that's not any benefit for them. They can't overcharge more than you could overcharge according to the Chachamim. Right? So therefore, when they heard that Rab Tarfon said that you can back out all day, that's just a loss to them. Rab Tarfon is saying that you can back out all day, and the Chachamim is saying you can only back out an hour or two until it takes to show someone this product. So therefore they went back to the Chachamim's opinion. But the Gemara asks on this pshat in the Rab Tarfon's opinion, if so, ihachi b'mai samchu me'ikara. Why does the Mishnah say that originally when Rab Tarfon said his opinion, he set the price of the Ainah at a third, so they were excited. What were they happy about? What is there to be happy about? When he set the price at a shlish, we're explaining now, it doesn't mean that he was saying that anything below a shlish is total mechila. You can't back out at all. No, what he was saying was that from a shtos until a shlish is all within this framework of Ainah, where the one that was frauded can back out. So there's no gain in following Rab Tarfon's opinion at all. So now the Gemara says, well, maybe the way to explain this, why originally they were happy with Rab Tarfon's opinion is, so here the Gemara is going to bring up another detail. What happens in a case where the halacha is bittul mekach? As I mentioned before, this is the third category, right? When according to the Rabbanon, when you were charged and you're overcharged over a sixth, so over there the halacha is bittul mekach. Now according to Rab Tarfon, if you were overcharged over a third, so the halacha is bittul mekach. Over here as well, what's this halacha of bittul mekach? When you say that when you were overcharged, so automatically you can retract from the sale right away. Does that mean that you could retract from the sale forever? Because you were overcharged so much, you could always retract from the sale? Or maybe no. Maybe even in this case of bittul mekach, that whoever wants can back out from the sale, that's only also with the shear that it said in the Mishnah, up until the amount that you could show it to somebody. The Gemara is soon going to discuss this Ibaya clearly, but over here the Gemara brings it up to try to explain the pshat of the Mishnah according to what we're saying now. What is the reason why the Tagari Lod were excited when they heard what Rav Tarfon said? If we're saying now that according to Rav Tarfon, from the shear of a shlish until the shear of a shtus, everybody agrees that the buyer can back out. What's the excitement about what Rav Tarfon said? So the Gemara says, the only way to explain this is, tifshait, let's explain and resolve and say as follows. The bitul mekach, that when the fraud was on a level where we say that the entire sale is batul, l'rabbanan l'olam chayzer. What the Rabbanan is saying is, that gives the buyer the option to back out forever. Now the kivin, the amulur Rab Tarfon, havyaino. So Rab Tarfon says that from the shear of more than a shtos until the amount of a shlish, so over here, that's not in the category of bittul mekach, that's in the category of aino. What's the din of aino? That who could back out? Only the buyer could back out. And how long could he back out? He could only back out all day, not forever. So samchu. So now, if that's the case, we can understand why the merchants of Lod were happy with the opinion of Rab Tarfon. Because according to the Rabbanon, if the Aina is from more than a shtos to a third, how long could you back out? Forever. Because that's in the bracket of bittul mekach. It's more than a shtos, so you can back out forever. According to Rab Tarfon, you can't back out forever. You could only back out all day. And then, again, according to Rab Tarfon, not all day, sorry, before you get to... Before you get to what Rab Tarfon told them that you could only back out all day, at this point, what they understood is that Rab Tarfon is telling them that you can back out until you show it to somebody else. They thought that Rab Tarfon holds like the Chachamim. You can only back out until you show it to someone else, which would be for an hour or two. So there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference between the Chachamim and Rab Tarfon. According to the Chachamim, within this bracket from more than a shtos to a third, you can back out forever, because this is already in the bracket of bittul mekach. And according to Rab Tarfon, how long could you back out? Just an hour or two. It takes you to show to someone, that to point out to you that you got frauded here. So then there was a big simcha. You're taking away from the buyer a big option to back out. So this gives the Tagari Lod a bigger option to overcharge. That's what their simcha was in the beginning, when they wanted to follow what Rab Tarfon said. But then, ki amar luhu kol hayom, then when the Rab Tarfon said, no, according to me, even in a case where there was just one person that was frauded here, and the halacha is that we apply the din of Aina, that yodei al yaina, the one that was frauded, could back out. So when he said to them, how long could he back out? He said, kol hayom, you could back out the entire day. Chazru. Over here they said, so if so, forget about it. We have no benefit of Rab Tarfon's opinion. So Rashi explains, why is there no benefit to Rab Tarfon's opinion? L'chayre, it still comes out that according to the Chachamim, within this bracket from more than a sixth to a third, you can back out forever. The buyer can back out forever. And according to Rab Tarfon, you can back out only all day. So the buyer has much less of an option to back out. So Rashi says that's not a big difference. Because as long as you're giving the buyer the option to back out all day, so he's going to be enough time for him to back out. That's not going to give the merchants any more option to overcharge this price, because the buyer still has the option all day to back out. Besides that, Rashi says that a level of Aina on this level is not shchiach, so therefore it's not something which gives them any benefit. So therefore, after they heard this, they said, forget about it. Rav Tarfon's opinion doesn't give us any benefit. So the Gemara now explains because if you're going to say the bittul mekach l'rabbanon, that even this entire concept of bittul mekach, when you overcharge more than a sixth, and we said that then there's a bittul mekach, that means that anybody can back out. But even then there's a limitation. When is that? Only b'chdei sheyira l'tager l'kroivai. Only a short amount of time that you can show this product to someone. If so, b'mai samchu. What is the big simcha over here with the opinion of Rab Tarfon? There's really no difference between the opinion of Rab Tarfon and the opinion of the Rabbanon when the fraud was from more than a sixth to a third. Because as we said before, according to Rab Tarfon, in this amount from a third from more than a sixth to a third, everybody agrees that you could only back out, that the buyer can back out up until that amount of time that it takes to show it to someone. So what, it doesn't give the merchants any more option to go and charge more Eino over here. The only difference is that according to the Rabbanon, because it's a Eino, which is more than a shtos, not only the buyer could back out, the seller could also back out. But that doesn't give them any more benefit from this. So why in the beginning did they have any simcha from the opinion of Rab Tarfon? So the Gemara here says, no, it could be like this. Maybe there's another detail here that we have to add to explain what Rab Tarfon holds. Bishtus atzma. And the Gemara answers, sorry, I missed one word over here, sorry. So the Gemara answers, Samchu, the reason why initially they were happy with Rab Tarfon's opinion is regarding the shtus itself. So now the Gemara says, this whole thing that we're saying, that according to Rab Tarfon, he's widening that area of Eino, that Eino goes from a third till more than a shtus, that's only till more than a shtus. How about Eino of the shtus itself? The Eino of the shtus itself, according to Rav Tarfon, is mechila. Over there, the buyer cannot back out at all. Well, Rabbanon Eino, and according to the Rabbanon, in the amount of a shtus, over there's Eino where you're giving the buyer the option to back out. So therefore, the Chatchila, when they heard the opinion of Rav Tarfon, what they were excited about, the opinion of Rav Tarfon was benigay to a shtus. Benigay to a shtus, which is a common overcharge. It's a common level of overcharging. The shtus, over there, the Rabbanon is saying that the buyer could still back out, and Rav Tarfon is saying you can't, that it's total mechila. That's why they were excited with the opinion of Rav Tarfon. But then later when they heard that Rav Tarfon says that you can back out the entire day, now that applies to the case where you were overcharged by from more than a sixth to a third. So over there it comes out that Rav Tarfon is giving much more of an option for the buyer to back out than according to the Chachamim, that you can only back out until you show it to a tagar. So therefore they went back to the opinion of the Rabbanon. Now the Gemara till here was discussing the Iboya regarding backing out when the fraud that happened was less than a shtos, or less than a third. By the way, the Gemara originally thought Rav Tarfon's opinion is, well, let's talk about less than a shtos. The Gemara was discussing in the case of when there's less of a shtus, where the halacha is mechila, that the whole mekach stays in effect. What does that mean? Does it mean la'alter, that the mechila is right away, or does it mean that the mechila is after a certain period where you could show it to someone? Now the Gemara goes to the other category, the opposite extreme, where the Eino was more than a shtus. And over there we say bittul mekach, that anybody can back out. So what does that mean? You have the option to back out forever? Over here, do I also apply the shear that you could only back out until a certain period of time? So the Shaila was asked, Bittul Mekach l'Rabbanon, the halacha that we said, that there's a Bittul Mekach when you overcharge more than a sixth, according to the Rabbanon, La'olam Chayzer. Does that mean that you could now back out forever? Or even over here, when we say that it's the sale is totally bottled and anybody can back out from this, that's only until the time that you can show it to someone. But after that amount of time, you can't back out anymore. Now the Gemara explains over here as well, similar to before, the Gemara explains the second side of the Ibaya. If you're going to say that even when you overcharge more than a six, you could only back out until you could show it to someone. If so, you're going to ask, what difference is there in the halacha of backing out from the sale when the fraud was a shtos or when it was more than a shtos? In both cases, you're given the option to back out just until when you can show it to someone. The answer is, the difference is the ilu shtos, by the case where the fraud was a shtos, mishan is ane chayzer, the one that experienced the fraud, he's the one that can back out, but the other one, the seller, let's say, that did not experience the fraud, cannot back out. Vilu yaser al shtos, but when it comes to a case where the fraud was more than a shtos, shneim chayzrim. Both the buyer, the seller, either one can back out from the sale. That's the only difference. But maybe the whole shear that we say, batul mekach, is only if you back out within this time that you could show it to someone. Tashema, so the Gemara again says, let's bring a raya from the case that we're talking about over here, the Tagari Lod. They heard Rab Tarfon's opinion. Rab Tarfon said that the shear of Eino is at a third. Chachamim said the shear of Eino is at a sixth. So the Mishnah says Samchu. They were excited with Rab Tarfon's opinion. Then they found out Rab Tarfon said that the amount of time that's given for the buyers to back out is all day. So they said, forget it. We're going back to the opinion of the Chachamim that says that the buyer could only back out a short time till you could show it to someone. They went back to the opinion of the Chachamim. So now the Gemara explains, again, as I said before, the obvious question over here is, why should they go back to the opinion of the Chachamim? Still, the Rab Tarfon is giving the Tagari Lod a much bigger option to overprice it, all the way up to a third. So why are we going back to the opinion of the Chachamim? So the Gemara says like this. So now if we're going to say that when you overcharge more than a sixth, according to the Rabbanon, so even over here, when the Chachamim say you can back out, till when? Till when can you back out from the sale? Not forever, only until you show it to someone. And Abtarfin is saying that you can back out the entire day. So therefore it makes sense why they backed out over here. Because regarding this case of more than a shtos, so over here there's a much bigger benefit if you follow the opinion of the Chachamim. Because according to the Chachamim, you're giving a very small window for the buyer to back out. According to the Abtarfin, you can back out all day. This is something which is it's much easier for the buyer to back out, so they went back to the opinion of the Chachamim. If you're going to say that according to the Rabbanon, once the fraud was more than a sixth, and there's a bitul mekach, that means that the buyer can back out forever. So then amai chazru b'dirab tarfim. Why? What's the benefit of going back? Sorry, this is how you read it. Amai chazru. Why did they go back from the opinion of Rab Tarfin and go to the opinion of the Chachamim? But the Rab Tarfin nichluhu. According to Rab Tarfin, it's much better. The kamashviluhu ayno kolayim v'suloi, because Rab Tarfin is saying that from more than a sixth until a third, Rab Tarfin holds that in that bracket it's still considered to be, it's a din of bitul mekach. According to Rab Tarfin, within that bracket, it's not considered to be bitul mekach because Rab Tarfin says a no is a third. So if a no is a third, so then more than a sixth, it's still a case where the halacha, according to Rab Tarfin, as we said before, according to Rab Tarfin, from a third until more than a sixth, what's the halacha? It's within the category of a no. Within the category of a no, the person can back out the entire day, but not more than that. And according to the Rabbanon, if it's more than a sixth, in what bracket is it? Not in the bracket of Ayna, where you can back out. It's in the bracket of Bitul Mekach, where you can back out forever. So the buyer has a much bigger benefit over here, the fact that he could back out forever. So why are they going away from the opinion of Rab Tarfin? Rab Tarfin is limiting it just the fact that they can back out for the day and not more. So the Gemara answers, Bitul Mekach lo shchiach. This case where you're saying that there's a much bigger benefit over here, according to Rab Tarfin, that you can back out, the buyers only given the option to back out all day and not more, that case, that benefit that there is, in Rab Tarfin's opinion, more than the Chachamim, is not shchiach at all. So therefore they went away from the opinion of Rab Tarfin because they said, let's look at the actual case where there is a no, where according to Rab Tarfin, according to Rabbanon, both of them, the case where there is a no by a shlish or by a shtos, over there, according to Rabbanon, you can back out only a couple hours, and according to Rab Tarfin, you can back out all day. So you're giving him much more time. But regarding the case of Bitul Mekach, the fact that according to the Rabbanon you can back out forever, and according to the Rab Tarfin you can only back out all day, over there they didn't take that into account, because that's something which is not common. Okay, now the Gemara just finishes off over here, just another few lines over here. The Gemara finishes off what the actual halacha is. Amar Rave said the halacha regarding all these different categories where a person was frauded. So Hilcha said the halacha is Pachas Mishtos, if the fraud was less than a shtos, Nikne Mekach. The sale stays in effect. And what this means is, the Gemara here, the Rishonim say that Rav is paskening like the halacha we said, if the fraud is less than a shtos, immediately the sale is in effect, you have no option to back out at all. We don't give any shear any time. Yaiser al shtos, if the fraud was more than a sixth, we follow like the Chachamim, bitul mekach. So over there, the halacha is that the mekach will be bottled. Now, when exactly it's bottled, until when it's bottled, the Gemara is soon going to say, shtos kana o machzerei. If it's a case of where the fraud was exactly the amount of a shtos, so then the sale is in effect, o machzerei, and you can ask back for that extra money that you were charged. So this is actually different than what we learned before, because before we learned in a case where the ayna was exactly a shtos, so then the one that experienced the ayna has an option. He could either back out from the whole sale or he ask back for his money. Rav is saying, no. Rav is saying in the case where it was a shtos, you could just ask back for your money. Now, v'zeh, these last two cases over here, when it was more than a shtos or a shtos, they could both back out when it was more than a shtos, or the one that was frauded could back out. That's only this period of time that it takes that you could show it to someone, but you can't back out forever. Now we learned in the Braise, like Rava's opinion, and here the Gemara is going to bring a raya to what Rava said regarding this detail that he says that when the Ina is a shtos, You can't back out from the sale altogether. You could just ask back for your money. So there's a machlokes actually about this in this brayse, and there's one opinion here in this brayse that says like Rava. The brayse says like this: Eino pachis mishtos nikne mekach. If the eino is less than a shtos, then the sale is in effect. You can't back out at all. Yeser al shtos batel mekach. If the eino is more than a shtos, then the sale is totally batel. Any one of them could back out. Now shtos, when the fraud is exactly a shtos, here is a machlokes. So one opinion is kana umachzor eino. The sale is in effect, but you could ask back for that money that you overcharged. Divrei Rav Nosson, this is Rav Nosson's opinion, and this is how Rava was paskening. Rav Yudan Nossi says, no, in such a case where the eino was the shtos, yad moicha alal yaina. If it's the moicher, the one that was frauded, so then he's going to have the upper hand. Roitze oimer loy tenli mekchi. If he was underpaid, so that if he wants, he could say, just give me back the whole product, forget about the whole sale. Oy tenli masha anisani. Or pay me that money that you still owe because you underpaid me. So this is the opinion that we were going by till now, and this is the opinion actually that it says in the Mishnah. Now the Brayse finishes off, vizeh, both of these cases where we said that the sale by bittul mekach, or when the one that was frauded could back out, that's only the amount of time that you can go and show this product to someone to assess if it was a fraud here. Now this last case of vizeh is not going on the last case that we just mentioned when the moicher experienced the fraud, because as we said before, in such a case he can back out forever, but it's going on the case where the lekeach experienced the fraud. Over here he has the product in his hands and he's given the amount of time to back out until he can go and show this product to someone.